Today we are making fermented tarhana, a true treasure of the Turkish kitchen. It's not just food, it's a way to preserve the season's best ingredients for months to come. The idea is to bring the summer ingredients into a mix, ferment it, dry it, and use it as a ready soup powder throughout the year. A perfect example for zero waste kitchen and fermenting the ingredients, which is also good for your gut health. In every angle when you look at it, it's a perfect ancient recipe. And I can confidently say it is probably first ready soup in the history. I have beautiful tomatoes. These are plum tomatoes, which has less water in it. So we usually prefer these, but if you have a garden, whichever tomatoes you are growing, you can use them. If it has too much water, you can squeeze out a little bit after cutting into half. The tomatoes are about 1.5 kilograms. I have 1 kilogram of onion. I have some red and green peppers. These are around half kilogram each. I want to use a little bit more red pepper to have its flavor and also color, so it is about 750 grams. Up to 1 kilogram you can use. I have a yogurt, 500 grams, that is straining. You can use strained yogurt. I just made my own strained yogurt here with the regular yogurt I have. I have around 250 grams of cooked chickpeas here. These will help to ferment it and also give extra richness and vitamin. And to flavor, I'm going to add a bunch of fresh mint. You can also add parsley if you like. We have dill that is overgrown. Usually in my region, my father's hometown, they also use it. In this one, I'm not gonna use it because I don't have it. Every region has its own recipe. And in Kastamonu, in the middle Black Sea region, they usually make it with raw ingredients without cooking them. In my previous recipe I shared, I usually cook my vegetables first to get the juice out a little bit, so I use less flour. This year I want to make it a raw version to compare with the cooked one. So first I'm going to roughly cut my vegetables, process in my food processor, bring them together in a big bowl or container you can also use, and then we will continue with the process. This is my tarhana that I made last year. I'm gonna use this as a yeast and it will refreshen also with my new tarhana powder. I'm starting with the tomatoes, cutting them up and sprinkling a little salt. Usually this is the moment when tomatoes release their juices. But with these egg tomatoes, not much happened. They stayed quite firm. If you are using a different variety though, you'll see how the salt draws out plenty of liquid. This step isn't strictly necessary, but it does help by leaving out the tomato juice. You won't need to add as much flour later to balance the mixture. The same goes for the yogurt. Look how much liquid came out. You can actually drink this one. It is healthy and refreshing. But for the tarhana I won't be using it because again less liquid here means a better texture later. Now it's time to process the vegetables. I'm starting with the onions. They release quite a lot of water, so I'll squeeze some of that out before moving on. After that, I will prepare the peppers, both red and green, which will bring beautiful color, sweetness and spiciness into my mixture. At this point, if you like spicy, you can use some of hot peppers, green peppers to give spiciness. Next, I'm processing my mint, bunch of mint, and then the chickpeas. The kitchen already smells so refreshing, beautiful with all the fresh vegetables processed. I wanted to add some tomatoes along with it to help processing with the help of an extra juice. And finally, I process the tomatoes. Once that's done, all the vegetables come together in one big bowl. Onions, peppers, tomatoes, fresh herbs, and yogurt forming the colorful base of our tarhana. So I have all the vegetables processed and put together here in my biggest bowl I have in the kitchen, along with the strained yogurt. It smells absolutely so flavorful, like you want to just dip some bread and have it. Now it's time to add the flour, and just to give as a starter my old tarhana. You can keep it like this, it will still going to ferment, or add a little bit dry yeast to activate the fermenting process, but it is not necessary. Another best thing would be if you are making sourdough bread, add your starter in it, and it will give all the flavors from the starter inside our tarhana as well. I have good amount of vegetable mix here, so I decided to use this container because it's gonna take a lot, and then while fermenting it will double in size. It is better to use big container. I have about 2 kilograms of flour here, so I will transfer this mixture here, stir until it becomes a dough, add more flour if needed. Before I continue, I wanted to process one more time the mixture to make it as small as possible using my hand blender. Into this mixture I'm gonna add a big tablespoon of pepper paste. This is optional. I want to add some color, deeper aroma, and some hotness. And I'm gonna add more flour, and along with my old tarhana last year I made. This year I decided to make a bigger batch of tarhana so I can share it with my family and friends. My mom and my mother-in-law are older now, and it's not so easy for them to make it anymore. For me, it feels like such a meaningful gift to give something homemade. But if you are making tarhana for the very first time, I recommend starting with a smaller amount. It's definitely easier to handle, and you'll still get to enjoy the full experience. And it is also going to be more than enough for the winter to use. I added about 3 kilograms of flour, working it until it became a stiff dough. Then let it ferment. In the first couple of days, I stirred it twice a day, then once a day to prevent mold from forming on top. Cover lightly with a cloth or leave the lid slightly open so air can circulate. In the first 2-3 days, the dough can soften with the juice of the vegetables, so you can add extra flour, but after that just don't add it. You will notice the dough rising, fermenting, and developing that characteristic sour aroma. And then the process will gradually slow down. If you have time, let it ferment for a full 21 days. If not, 10 to 12 days will still give you a delicious result. After fermenting for 21 days, you will notice the tarhana dough has become much firmer and stiffer. As it continued to dry with the airflow, it naturally stiffens. At this stage, I added about 3/4 of a cup rock salt. This not only helps preserve the tarhana, but also makes it easier to break the dough down into powder later on. For the last 3 weeks, the whole house has been smelling of tarhana, and finally it's time to dry it. I spread a clean tablecloth over my kitchen island. Drying usually takes 2 or 3 days, so if you need your table every day, you can also set this up near a window or even down on the floor. The cloth helps absorb any leftover moisture and will also use it to cover the top, keeping the dough clean and protected from the direct sunlight. I take pieces from the tarhana dough and place them on the cloth. We don't want them in the sun directly, that can fade the beautiful color. Instead, keep them in the shade where there is a good airflow. After a few hours or the next day, I flip the pieces over. I check them a couple of times during the day, breaking them down gradually for more even drying. The next morning, it was even more drier. You can use a grater to help at this stage to break down, and mine was ready to process. The texture should still be slightly damp so it can break down easily in the food processor, but not so moist that it can stick together otherwise. Since back and forth I checked couple of times, I was ready to process them the next day after about 24 hours. But definitely it can change depending on the season you are having, if it is hot or cold, sunny or rainy. The finer you grind the tarhana into powder, the easier it will melt into a smooth soup later. But even if it looks like powder in the processor, there are always a few larger bits hiding in the mix. To work around this, I sift the tarhana using a big colander we call kalbur in Turkish. The fine powder falls through while the bigger pieces stay on top. Those can simply go back into the processor for another round until everything is even. After processing, I ended up with a big batch of tarhana soup powder, and it smells absolutely wonderful. But it is still a little damp at this stage, so make sure to spread it out and stir it for a couple of more days. This way it dries completely and will keep well for months. Okay, I have my beautiful tarhana powder ready. After the processing, it has been drying for about 5 more days, and I just kept coming and stirring from time to time to dry it complete. This step is also important, so it doesn't dampen and spoil somehow. It has to be completely dry. The best and traditional way is to store in this kind of cotton bags. This is from my mom. This is the last year's tarhana I have left, but still beautiful. A bit lighter because it has been waiting for a year. but it's still okay. If you have place, put it into the fridge. That is better. Cool, dry place is the best. This will be too much for me. I will hopefully give some of it as a gift. So now I'm eager to try this year's tarhana for the first time. Let's get some and cook together and taste. After all this processing, I would love to say that just pouring the tarhana powder into a bowl magically turns it into hot soup, but it doesn't, my friends. What I can say though is that making the soup is almost that easy. I used about half cup of tarhana soup powder. Just a little more. And then I will add some water. Cook on medium-low, stirring frequently until it thickens. That's all actually, but there are ways to flavor it. You can heat up some extra tomato or pepper paste to the base with some oil, or saute some ground beef. In Kastamonu region, they also crack 1 egg into the oil, saute until it is crumbled all the way, and then add the mixture tarhana with scrambled eggs. And there are other tons of ways to make it. I'm also thinking after this recipe to use this tarhana powder in different kinds of recipe. Maybe I would also share this in another episode. So I added half cup of tarhana powder and 4 cups of water. The water is cold. It is the best. Sometimes I use warm to make it to shorten the time. But when you begin with cool water and continue to stir, it dissolves even more beautifully and it comes out creamy. And stir from time to time while you do other things, and it will thicken gradually, become a beautiful soup. This is the very basic one. There are lots of possibilities, but this time let's make a simple butter, mint and a pepper chili flakes sauce on top and serve right in. Tarhana has such a unique taste. Tangy from the yogurt, full of depth from the fermented vegetables and spices. It is slightly sour, savory and comforting all at once. Let's taste it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This soup is smooth and velvety with a flavor that somehow feels both hearty and light. For many of us, it's the taste of childhood winters, something that warms you through on the coldest days. So here it is, my friends, a bowl of tarhana soup with the dried powder in front of me. Weeks of fermenting and drying all came down to this warm, comforting bowl of soup. If you have never made it before, I encourage you to try even in small batch. It is, believe me, easier than it looks, and nothing beats the flavor of homemade soup. Taste the magic of this centuries-old recipe. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next episode. Afiyet olsun.